My name's Alex, and I work as a fitness trainer. Today, I felt compelled to share an experience with you all, a real-life incident that happened within my own family. So, here's how it went. We were all sleeping one night, when suddenly, my cousin called to say they were coming over. It was really late, around 12:30 a.m., a time when most people are asleep. At first, I thought maybe something urgent had come up, or maybe they just felt like visiting us. But when they arrived, the story they shared left us all in shock. My cousin told us about his older sister. They had all been sitting together at home, talking, when suddenly she changed her voice and, in a voice that wasn't hers. She said to her brother, "I'll pick you up and throw you out the window." She was out of control. My cousin and his family were so terrified that they immediately left their house and came straight to ours. Hearing this, I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. This was my own cousin's sister he was talking about. We were all scared, not knowing what to make of it. Later, their family called in a spiritual healer to handle the situation. When the healer arrived, he examined her and said that a spirit had taken control of her body, something powerful that had invaded her being and was controlling her actions. She was acting in ways that weren't her own. She was doing things she would never be able to do by herself. Whatever was controlling her was incredibly strong. No one could restrain her. Her brothers tried to hold her down, but she just kept screaming, "Let me go." She was entirely out of control. After a while, the healer read some verses over her, gave her blessed water, and she finally calmed down. But even after that, she couldn't sleep properly for days. She had this fear that if she closed her eyes, that spirit would come back, grab her by the throat, and say, "I'll throw you out." The fear stayed with her for a long time. Personally, I don't usually believe in these kinds of things. But when it's happening to someone close to you, it makes you think twice. Stories like this are everywhere, but when you're the one dealing with it, it's an entirely different experience. So, my advice to everyone would be to stay cautious, avoid wearing fragrances at odd hours, and stay away from trees and graveyards at night, because these things can happen to anyone. Yes, we hear a lot of such stories. Sometimes it feels like they might be exaggerated or even fake. But then again, maybe not. My name's Rahul, and today, I want to share a personal experience with me. I have a friend who's a bit of a scholar, and people often say he has certain powers. One time, we were visiting another friend, and my friend mentioned he needed to use the washroom. Since it was an apartment building and nobody else was around, a neighborhood kid suggested asking the watchman if he could use the washroom at the back. So, the watchman took us to his washroom behind the building. It was nighttime, and as soon as we reached there, my friend suddenly lifted his hands and started reciting prayers out loud. The watchman stopped where he was, and my friend just kept praying. He went into the washroom, came back, and told me that something was seriously wrong with that building. I asked him what he meant. He said he'd seen something back there, a figure sitting near a fire. The moment it noticed him, it attacked. He specifically called it she, which makes me think it was female. As soon as it attacked, he began praying loudly. People say he has a kind of spiritual protector, so he can sense these things. But he warned me not to talk about it out in the open because those places are their homes, and we need to respect that. He also advised the people in that building not to throw any trash, wrappers, or waste from their balconies or kitchen windows, as it could come back to harm them. I thought about how we'd feel if someone threw garbage in front of our homes. We'd definitely want to confront them. He strongly advised that no one should go to the back of the building after sunset, at least until dawn. During the day, there's no issue, it's safe to use that path and area. He mentioned that in holy days, these things usually disappear, but he warned not to talk about them at the building's gate. Apparently, these entities might be nearby, listening. After hearing all this, people took his words seriously, especially because they knew him and trusted him. He even advised the neighborhood residents to avoid throwing trash from their balconies. If you toss garbage near certain places, like around the washrooms, it can invite these problems. Although he didn't disclose the exact location or building, I thought it'd be important to share this experience. I'm Sarah, and I hope you're all doing well. Today, I have a ghost story to share with you. I'm sure most of you have heard of sleep paralysis. It's when you're asleep, but your eyes suddenly open, and even though you want to move or get up, you're completely frozen. Something similar happened to me once, but I was fully awake. I was sitting at my dining table when, all of a sudden, I bent forward, my head dropping down. I tried to get up, but I couldn't move. My entire body felt paralyzed, even though I was wide awake. It was like sleep paralysis, but while awake. After about 10 minutes, my body finally relaxed. Some people say that a spirit sometimes takes over your body, and when it leaves, you're able to move again. That happened to me as a child, but it was nothing compared to what happened next. Once, when I was teaching at school, I noticed tiny muddy footprints on the desk while I was explaining something to the kids. I asked them who had climbed on the desk, but they were all wearing shoes, so how could there be footprints? We ignored it at the time, but a few days later, while I was teaching, I felt a heavy pressure in my head, almost as if something was weighing me down, even though the classroom was well lit. This heaviness continued even after I got home. I'd fall into a deep sleep and only wake up the next morning for school. My health kept declining, so I got several tests done. But everything was clear. Then an elder with spiritual knowledge told me there were 3 jinn children sitting on my shoulders, and they would even sit among the students in my class. I asked him if they could be seen, but he said no. He explained that they wouldn't appear because they liked me. They were attached to me and followed me home, sitting on my shoulders and back, making me feel heavy and tired all the time. Thankfully, he removed them, and things improved after that. Another incident happened at the same school. There were 2 washrooms, one upstairs and one downstairs. 45 teachers used these washrooms, but I was the only one who had issues. I usually avoided the upstairs washroom, since it had a traditional toilet, and I preferred the commode-style one downstairs. One day, I felt nauseous and had to use the upstairs washroom, even though it had new lights and a new pipeline. There was a strange heavy presence in there. While vomiting, I suddenly felt like my heart was stopping. I grabbed the sink, but I couldn't even call out for help. I felt paralyzed again. Luckily, a teacher saw me and helped me out. She splashed water on my face, but after that, my body felt so heavy and even started swelling. My kidney tests showed early signs of failure. My liver tests were also abnormal, and I couldn't even speak properly. My blood pressure was at 200, high enough to cause a heart attack. Whenever someone touched me, I'd scream as if my body was about to explode. They placed medicine under my tongue and sent me home with my husband, who continued with my medical tests. Everything seemed to be failing, and nothing made sense. Thankfully, my brother's friend recommended a spiritual healer, a homeopathic doctor, who lived nearby. My brother took me there, and as soon as the healer saw me, he sensed something wrong. He warned that if this thing wasn't removed, I'd suffer a heart attack in a few days. He performed some spiritual healing and told me that for the next 7 weeks, I'd need to pour animal blood over my head and face as an offering. He explained that if I didn't do it, the spirit would eventually kill me. At that point, I couldn't even pray. Anything related to religion felt unbearable. Eventually, we found someone willing to perform the sacrifice and pour the blood on me. After 7 weeks of this continuous ritual, I finally felt some relief. I got all my tests done again, liver, kidney, everything was normal. My body, which had become so swollen, returned to normal size.